are here to resume our training on the discovery process. We'll be wrapping up discovery by the time the day ends. So the PowerPoint will be coming up here momentarily. And we just want to remind everyone, make sure you had a chance to either pull up the Coyote Minnesota CE plan so that you can highlight that in an exercise we're going to do in a Word document, or if you felt more comfortable having it at your side, you could print that off and have 3 different colors of highlighters ready and available to do a little highlighting exercise. So you're going to see a photo up here, represents discovery. We are going to let discovery lead the way. We don't know sometimes what's coming up around the next turn, but we're going to go with the flow. We're going to allow the process to happen. And just to re-engage everyone, if you can just put something in the chat, what did you learn yesterday, or something that we covered yesterday? Don't be shy. Thank you, Emily, for putting the handout into the chat there. I see a descriptive writing, More detail and life activities. Perfect. So 2 of our big main topics that we covered were descriptive writing, because it's so important to the process, and then life activities, you know, what that person naturally does. So today we're going to take that information that we learned and we're going to go into the next steps. We're going to cover theme development, testing themes, visual resumes, and how to wrap the process up with your final customized employment plan meeting, which happens at the conclusion of the discovery process. So with that, I'm going to kick it off here to Pam. Next slide.
Pam, you're on mute.
Thank you for that. We don't want that to happen. So in the CE plan, we have been gathering and putting in a ton of information from the interviews and from home visits and life activities and all of these things. So this section, the employment profile, is kind of where we summarize it and we put it all together. So it's all sort of synthesized into this area where the conditions for employment, where the student or the job seeker would be doing their best, those kinds of things are really pulled out. So we're pulling out all of that information and then sort of listing it here, identifying it in this particular area. Also those strengths. So we're looking at those 3 legs of the stool again, making sure that we have solid information, enough of a deeper, broader, vibrant picture of this job seeker, that those 3 legs are solid. Because when we do that, then as you're going to see in the next activity, how all of that just bubbles up to the surface, and it's really identified how solid that stool really is. And so it's going to become a lot clearer. You're also going to be noticing things as you're doing that. There's going to be things that are commonalities that, you know, between people that you've talked to, between things that you've seen. So this part of the plan isn't particularly huge, but it's the place that we can kind of accumulate all of those things and put all of that information in. And it just sort of brings it all back together, because in our next, as we go through today, those themes are going to start to appear. And so this is kind of that final summary of everything that you've identified through all of those activities that we've gone through the last couple of sessions. Next, Emily.
I'm sorry, I can't see the PowerPoint. Is it up right now?
It is not yet.
All right, no problem.
I don't know if we had a little technical glitch there, perhaps.
Oh, that's all right. All part of the experience. It makes it even better. It makes it more authentic, I should say. Right? I think that's what the cool kids are saying. So
That's what the cool kids say.
I'll leave it to the educators to validate that or not, though.
Mhm.
So I think we can still move forward as we're getting the PowerPoint up and running again here. Next, we really wanted to bring it together, as Pam was saying, the three legs of the stool: skills, interest, ideal conditions. Now that we typically have gone through in the customized employment process, that home visit, the neighborhood mapping, we've done some interviews, some life activities. And so I know this is something that we're just talking about and you haven't experienced yourself, but typically we've as you can see with descriptive writing, we're gonna have so much rich information that we've gathered and collected. And so now it's time to really focus in, and even though in our heads and through our observations and working with the student, we may start to be categorizing those skills, interests, and ideal conditions, we also want to make sure that we're verifying that, and we're going to do that with a very simple exercise. And so we're going to now refer to the document, to the Coyote plan, and we're going to do, and you're going to bring out your 3 highlighters at this time.
I'm just gonna show mine one until we get more information on what happened to
Yep. Great. Thank you so much, Pam.
yeah.
And this is actually a great example because you'll see firsthand what we're going to be asking for. So we want to assign a color to your highlighters may be different than our highlighters. So typically we have assigned it to one specific color. So you're going to assign a color to skills. You're going to assign a highlighter color to interest, and you're going to highlight the third one to ideal conditions. No problem, Emily. She just had her computer froze. She'll be back online any second. As they say, the show must go on. So for this exercise, though, we don't actually need the PowerPoint. You're going to see, so we're going to spend actually the next 25 minutes going through this document and highlighting the skills, interests, and ideal conditions of Truman thus far. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to already read through as we progressed through the trainings and kept up with Truman. But we're going to actually go through this whole document up into the points through the life activities. So with that being said, hopefully you have the Coyote plan up as well as your 3 highlighters. Are there any questions about the activity?
So we're kind of going through, but Josh, we're kind of stopping at right here at employment profile, right?
Correct. Yep. Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Pam. Yep. So we're going to go through the life activities and we're going to end before the employment profile.
I have a quick question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Can I get the handout sent to my email? I can't seem to like click on it in the chat.
Yes is the answer. We will work on that here.
Okay.
And who was that? Just asking, was that Rachel?
Yeah, it was. I'm sorry. I can put my email in the chat.
Great. And it looks like Sarah is also looking for a plan as well. So we will get you those as soon as possible here. I just have the version with the highlighter, Margie, but we'll get you those in a second. But if you don't have any questions, we'll be on. We're going to take, again, the next, 23 minutes now to do this exercise. So go ahead, start highlighting, and then we'll reconvene and we'll talk about what we discovered throughout the document and how, and share all the information. So. Okay.
I'll just say, because Emily was kicked off and then it probably went to Lindsay as the host, but Lindsay had to go pick up her son. So it sounds like we have somebody waiting in the waiting room. So if you can let them know, we'll let them in as soon as either Lindsay or Emily gets back on. So we don't have the power to let anybody in.
But we also can't see who's in the waiting room.
Right.
I just saw it pop up as like a little footnote, but I can't actually, it's not like in the chat.
Rachel, do you have access to the ECBC SharePoint? Because the Coyote plan is in that SharePoint as well, in the training
Yeah, I
doc.
have the SharePoint open.
You do
Um,
open?
Yeah, I have it open right now, but I can't find the Coyote.
Hey, we'll try to get you that and we'll put it in the chat. Give us 1 second here.
It's called Handout 4, the Coyote MNCE plan. It's in our session 3 and 4, part 2 of Discovery. It's called Handout 4. Does that help?
Singer appears.
Yeah, I'll try to find it really quick.
Okay. It's towards the bottom. It's like the third from the bottom.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. We are working on getting you the version and putting it in the chat. Margie, do you have the unhighlighted version by chance? Up? I guess let me go into my SharePoint as well, see if I can snag that. Okay, handout 4. All right, I got that, Margie. Give me 1 second here. Well,
I wonder if it's because when Emily got kicked out, because she was connected with that document. I don't know. That people can't open it.
Is there something you need me to do?
Josh,
I'm here.
Oh, Josh got it.
I am working on it right now, guys. And
Emily's in, so she'll get the control back.
I'm so sorry, everyone. I had a little internet glitch there. I apologize.
Technology, we love it.
oops.
One more. There we go. Did everyone
Also,
get
just
the-
another note, I just had a private message talking about this exercise. So again, just because everyone may have different color highlighters, we're asking you to assign your own colors, 1 to skills, 1 to interest, and 1 to ideal conditions. So as long as you know what you're assigning the colors to and what you're highlighting, that's what matters. And Emily, I don't know if you'd be willing to very quietly maybe play some background music. We don't need the full techno head bump, but you know.
Dan, were you able to get the document? She was saying that she couldn't get it. I don't know if anybody emailed it to her, because I can do that too.
I don't know if the link that was in the chat worked or not.
Can anyone sign into the state of Minnesota website, which you list to? Because I'm not a member of that. So is that going to be a problem, Josh?
Are you talking about the SharePoint?
Yes.
Right.
So if I could just chime in, if anybody has questions about the SharePoint, feel free to, I'll put my email in the chat again. I can assist you. I know I helped somebody this morning via Zoom and we were in like 2 minutes. So I'm happy to walk anybody through that. So I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay, I could use some help, Lindsay.
Absolutely, Sarah. So let me put my email in and then we can communicate via email and schedule a time to do a Zoom and I can walk you through it while you're sharing your screen.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
everyone, just wanted to check in with you all. We're going to just go up to about 1:10, 1:15, just depending on where you guys are at in this with this activity. So just wanted to check in. Hopefully it's going well for you, but we'll do this for another till about 1:10, 1:15. Hi everyone, just wanted to check in. I know we said we'd go till 1:10. How about this? If when you are done, would you turn on your video? Unless you're Mike, Rebecca, or Megan, or Sherry, or Dan, because your video's already on. But that'll just be a good gauge of who's done and who needs more time for this exercise. And if we don't complete it by the time frame, I mean, if we need to go an extra 5 minutes, happy to do so. But again, since this is just a training, you're not being graded, so. Well, hopefully that was enough time for everyone. And I appreciate everyone turning on their screens just to indicate. I have to give two quick shout outs to some of the students here. Both of the Kaylas, I mean, shout out to everyone for being here. Let's be inclusive. But Kayla, as a Delby, these two are hardcore CE because Kayla has at least two little ones while attending this training. And then we have Kayla Stone, or go ahead, Kayla.
No, I have dogs barking also because someone's cutting down a tree and they're like, bark, bark, bark. So a lot going on.
Well, we appreciate you being here. And then we have Kayla Stone. At first, I thought it was a fancy Zoom background, but she's actually in a car here attending this training, and that's the first. So props to you, Kayla.
Thanks. I'm driving to Denver.
All right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I had to just throw out those shout outs as I'm looking in on everyone here. So we just wanted to bring this back together and talk about how was this exercise? Was it easy? Was it, how much information? Would somebody be willing to share just their thoughts on the exercise as a whole? Yeah, go ahead. Let's see here. Rebecca?
I'm pretty familiar with the skills and interests part, but I don't think I'm quite as familiar with the ideal conditions part. So would like to know a little bit more about what that looks like when it's highlighted or what I was supposed to highlight for that part.
Great. We will cover that. Hopefully everyone will be able to chime in on that, but great question. Was it relatively easy to do though? And I think this is the big thing is we've collected all this information, we've done all this work, and then for this is just a simple exercise or technique, right? To bring it all together. The next phase of the process and the profile, the Minnesota CE plan is actually summarizing all of the sections that we've done thus far. And this highlighting exercise is just an easy way to do that. And I think this also applies to all of your documents that you have as educators as well. So we use this as, for the Minnesota CE plan and for customized employment, but there certainly may be educational documents that you could use this on as well. It also could be done as an exercise with the students, possibly that they are trying to identify their skills, interest, and ideal conditions and adding to that as well. So just wanted to throw that out there, you know, just some ideas on how to start embedding this portion of it as well. So one thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to facilitate and rate at the same time here, but in the chat, could people, or is anyone willing to share, or can people share what they have for skills? So look through your document, write down skills that you saw for Coyote, and we will be sharing all of these, things compiled together afterwards in just a little bit. So in the chat, any skills? Okay. So we have mowing lawn, chat hunting, hunting, fishing, blowing snow, shoveling, verbal communicator.
Okay, so, oh, now they're starting to flow. What?
No, keep on going. Yeah, I mean, that's the best part about this chat.
Money management, cooking, shopping, sewing, measuring liquid solids, working with tools, mechanical devices, walking on uneven surfaces, operating machinery, snowmobile, snowblower, auger, gun safety, able to follow a small list, household chores, organizing, tackle skills learned from Boy Scouts, physically strong, building summer park trails, quiet and calm demeanor, making his lunch, blowing snow, put the games and systems back into the cupboard, making sure the door was shut, knowledge of safety rules, can shovel snow, drawing skills, good attention to detail, hunting, fishing, map reading.
Great. Thank you all. And thank you, Pam, for jumping in and reciting. I thought I was be able to type and say it all at once, but once they started coming in, That's fantastic. And guys, we're compiling it right now. I will show this in a few slides here, but as you can just see from this chat, look how many different skills or things that we've already identified through this process. So again, great job on the highlighter exercise. Next, let's talk about interest. Can you throw in the chat? And I'm just going to put interest or a little break here. For interest, can you put in what you had for the Coyote plan?
Video games, hunting, fishing, camping, working outdoors, sports, video games, camping, outdoors, looking at magazines. This is where I eat a lot. Drawing, working outside, snowshoeing, canoeing, building items, being outdoors, being active, being more on his own, video games, guns, hunting, fishing, magazines, going to the cabin, skiing, more outdoors. Spending time with family, mom, dad, grandpa, snowmobiling, Boy Scouts, decorating his room with things that he's interested in. Carving, wood burning.
All right, that was awesome, guys. Family outings.
Family outings. Gander Mountain, Cabela's, equipment that goes, accessories that go with hunting and fishing, likes to be prepared and complete quality work.
Okay, that was awesome, everyone. Good job. And again, you can just see all of these things that we've already captured. Now we're just highlighting. All right, so the last one, ideal conditions. And can you put down ideal conditions that you see? That you found, I should say.
Outdoors, working outdoors, give him extra time. Being outdoors, getting snacks is a plus. Like snacks. Follows rules on how to complete tasks. Outdoors, hands-on learner. Repetition with a chance to work under observation before being fully independent. A safe work environment. Praise for steps work. For what steps work, outdoors, small group of people that he feels comfortable with, having a routine, outdoors, not in big groups, not a lot of people, working alone, getting recognized for doing his good work in his interest areas. Small group of people that he knows, non-competitive work environment. And having a known place to work for the work items that he needs. Some variety in the work, gentle, soft-spoken supervisor, working with quiet people, extra time for new tasks, would not want to do heavy physical labor for a full day. Space, needs space.
Again, great, everyone. That was awesome. And then hopefully you can all see, and we're going to compile this. Again, just so much information, so many things that we've learned already. And I think the best part about this is hopefully if you missed something, you saw what other people have written it as well, and seeing how those could be ideal conditions. But, you know, for that, starting with the ideal conditions, I just absolutely love, you know, getting outside, a work routine, having the tools and resources, a friendly manager. When you say it like that, these seem like pretty reasonable ideal conditions, right? When we talk about small working environments, or not doing manual labor for full days, we can automatically start thinking about new businesses that we may be approaching, new employment type of industries, things of that nature. And we may also be figuring out which ones, of course, are not going to be a good fit. I'm just looking at the time right now, just a couple quick follow-up, and then we'll take a break in just a few minutes here. But also just going over the skills and for the skills. Obviously, we had lawn mowing, shed hunting, or sheds, hunting, fishing, snow blowing. So these are all different things that we're, again, conceptualizing of maybe he could be doing outside. And then obviously is going to be a reoccurring theme, which we'll be launching into in just a little bit. So tying it all back, do you guys see, as educators, do you guys see the value in this? Do you see you guys using this exercise moving forward? And this is going to lead into themes, which is going to be our next point of conversation here. Oh. Give me 1 second here, everyone. All right. So we're going to work on compiling all of that. All right. So again, I think the other important thing to notice here in all three of these things is that, of course, we're not talking about any negatives. We're also talking about just the positive and what a person can do and where they're going to be most successful. So again, that's part of the brilliance of this process. Also, I think we want to throw out there that you may hear us use now kind of interchangeably skills and strengths. We really focus on the skills portion, especially at the beginning when you're doing these observations, because I really think it's easier to default to highlighting someone's attributes or including attributes and not focusing in on skills. But when we start talking about some of the attributes as well, that's also going to kind of play into ideal conditions, work cultures, and how we're going to maybe think about different employment industries moving forward. So It looks like we're scheduled for a break in just 3 minutes. I know this is an awkward sequence here. Unless one of the other trainers has something to add on real quick, would be a good time to take a break.
I just want to add one thing. I know someone, and I don't remember who it was, came out and said, you know, how do I figure out these conditions? And so some of those, and you're right, are not as blatantly described. And so you're kind of having to figure that out. And that's another reason as we move forward that we're doing some testing in real work situations to refine those ideal conditions and really get those right. So some of those aren't always said, you know, you're kind of inferring that from information, from previous examples and things you see and draw upon. So hopefully that made sense as people listed some of those conditions out, you know, how we arrive at those, but just wanted to make that comment. And then another comment that I saw in the chat from Rachel, how helpful would this be for our VR needs assessment? Counselors, you know, as you're writing your needs assessment, you know, you've got their strengths and skills, you've got their interests here, and those conditions are.
Margie, I think you're lagging. That's all right. No, that was great, Margie. Yeah, I think just to recap, just as she cut out there in the last second, just great for our own VRS needs assessments as well, right? It automatically has a lot of that information that we're looking for. But then also, I just want to throw out there, you know, we're still moving forward with this process, and it's evolving and always it's always an evolving process, and we're always learning more. So we're certainly going to be adding on as we continue to verify information throughout the process. Just are these ideal conditions true? You know, I think this is also just going through this exercise as you work with students. I think I know you already probably had this lens on, but really it's going to start saying, okay, even when they're being successful, what's making them successful, right? When you're doing these life activity observations, when you're working with them in work experiences, I think you're going to be able to highlight a lot more that you already knew, but then you're going to start documenting down, just as we saw the impact of descriptive writing. So one last tie in there is clearly, because of descriptive writing, we're able to go back and capture all of this information. Without the descriptive writing, this activity would maybe not as impactful. So you can see the correlation and why we advocate for descriptive writing, and you can see how it can impact the work that you do in such a positive way. We know it's a lot more time intensive, but at the same time, it's really capturing all of that information for the students. So with that being said, it's 1:30 on the dot right now. I think it's time for a break. We will come back in 10 minutes at 1:40, everyone. Are you bringing us back in, Margie?
Yep, I'm just having some problems here, so hold on one second here.
No problem.
Okay, welcome back from break. Can you hear me now? Okay, welcome back from break, everyone. Just momentarily here, the PowerPoint should be coming back up. Our next slide is a quote from a French philosopher in the 1700s, Denis Diderot. This was during the Enlightenment period, and we'll take a look at the quote here as soon as it comes up. Right here. So this is really important to CE and what we're talking about next in our process here. There are three principal means of acquiring knowledge: observation of nature, reflection, and experimentation. Observation collects facts, reflection combines them, and that experimentation verifies the result of that combination. So this is a pretty powerful statement and how it relates to CE. We've been doing observations, collecting a lot of facts and information thus far in the process. Now we're reflecting, looking back and saying, how do these things fit together? And shortly we're going to be moving into this experimentation phase, or verifying what we have and how the combination works. Next slide, please. So we're going to begin to talk about themes. We've mentioned it a few times thus far, but this is one of the parts of CE that's really hard sometimes for people to understand or grasp. And so we're going to work really hard at breaking it down and then just having it evolve through our process. We've said all along, we want you to trust the process. When we started off today, you know, we showed this picture of this winding river. You don't know what's next around the corner, but take it step by step, follow the flow, follow each step of the process. It's going to yield you results. And so as we think about themes, and you see this gentleman looking up here trying to conceptualize this, we're talking about really broad, big, overarching categories here. And we're not talking about job descriptions. And the reason that we do this is the broader we can get, it's going to open up a lot more doors of options. And you're going to see this as we move forward in the process, how the creation of themes and using themes now as we look at tasks, that there will be 1,000 more possibilities of employment options instead of having that narrow scope of a job description and where do I find that, okay? Next slide, please. Themes. The word theme is often associated with literature, music, or design to reflect this reoccurring unifying subject or idea. And in customized employment, themes are used to identify those reoccurring unifying interests, skills, and conditions of employment. And this is brought to us by our own Lindsay Alexander from Northern Minnesota. She works in state-operated services, runs a small vocational program up in Northern Minnesota. Lindsay is also one of our co-trainers that teaches Minnesota CE. And so this was just a great way to describe and try to wrap our heads around what we're talking about at themes and how they come together in the customized employment process. And we always say, you know, you don't want to jump ahead. Just as you start the discovery process with someone, you don't want to start thinking about jobs. We're just not there yet. We're still not there. At this point, you've gathered all this information, you've included it, put it in your Minnesota CE plan, and we're still not thinking about employment yet. We have some really important parts to do before we get to that. Okay, next slide, please. So now this is a good visualization. Now we're starting to pull together, and we made really long lists just a minute ago with the exercise and highlighting that Coyote plan. We have long lists of skills. We have long lists of interests, things that we picked up on with Coyote. And we have some needs or some of his ideal conditions that will need to be in place for him to be successful at employment. So as these three areas intersect, this is how we come up with themes. So themes, again, are these broad unifying patterns that we're going to see as we look at this separate list of skills, needs, and conditions, and interests. And if we look at our customized employment stool, we think of themes as this overarching piece that holds everything together. It's the seat pan or the base of all of this stool. And this, people, is the essence of our discovery. This is all the information we've gathered. This is where we've come to. This is kind of where the river has led us, if we think about it that way. And so we want you to look at those lists as you're working with students or individuals. And again, this is how this opens up employment options to all different kinds of possibilities. You know, if we just take Coyote, for example, and the list of skills that we came up with, I think we're going to show that in just a moment here, but we had a long list of skills. If you break that down into skills, as well as combining that with his interests, there's a lot of places he can work. Now, we also need to consider what those conditions are and find employment sites that have those conditions. But before we get to that part of moving to employment, we need to test these themes. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit later this afternoon. But this is how together. Okay, next slide.
All right. Well, just moving on with themes and how to bring it all together, I think it's best to relate it back to Coyote, the man himself. And so, Pam, if you wouldn't mind sharing the document, this is a shot of all of the responses that we, that all of you shared within the last highlighter exercise. And again, I just want to relate it back to all of you as well, and as educators. I mean, look at all this information that we've brought together. You know, you can see the stuff that you've put down. You can compare it to what other people have observed and work together to really fill in those blanks on what you've missed or what they've gathered. But we're going to go through this right now. Let's start by looking through this. What are some of the, in the chat, what are some of the common things that you see across the board in all three of these columns? Where are we seeing these reoccurring patterns, as Dennis had said to us before? Outdoors. Yep. No wrong answers here. Just look through, see where we can see some overlap. Think we can be broad in how we're thinking as well. Active. I love that, Kayla. Safety. Variety. Following rules. Great. Attention to detail. Routine. Things you can do alone or just as dad. Yep, things you can do alone or just with someone else. Being by himself and in small groups. Great. Hands-on work. So let's take a couple of those right now, real quick here. And let's talk about outdoors as a theme. We see that in all three columns, right? So we also see a lot of other things. Let's just take reading maps. Now that's something that he could easily do, that could come in handy in a possible scenario at work for a part of his job, maybe even getting to know his new workplace. However, you don't see that in all three columns. So it's not that we couldn't follow that, but it's just not the strongest thing to follow. So again, talking about themes and where it reoccurs, we'll go to outdoors. So one thing that we're going to do in a little bit here is also talk about mind mapping. But when you start thinking about outdoors, what are some of the things you start thinking about? Throw that in the chat when you think about outdoors. Whatever comes to mind when you think outdoors. In terms of work or activities or anything, businesses. Doesn't even have to be that. Yep. Working at a park, fishing guide. Lawn mowing, construction, weather conditions, DNR, camp counselor, snow removal, bait shop, seasonal work, extreme temperatures, dog walking. So with a lot of these, landscaping, right? We're not getting into specific job descriptions, right? I think that's the power of this, is all of a sudden, because we don't start with a specific job description, like Marjorie was saying, all of a sudden we're starting to see all these different industries, all these different ways that we can connect to outdoors. And that was just in 15 seconds of us throwing some stuff into the chat, right? So imagine doing this, and again, we're going to talk more about mind mapping, and we're having you do this in a couple of slides here. But imagine doing this with your team on behalf of a student. Imagine doing this with the student. And I think that's the brilliance of this, is that there's no wrong answers. And at this time, it's really kind of like a word processing game, right? How do you register? What do you think of? And so we all come from different backgrounds and different experiences with things. And so that's where the magic happens, because we get to explore so many new things that we may have not have thought of prior to this. And so I think that's a good transition slide into the next one, which is what are some of the common things that we often shift to when we think about jobs for the students that we're working with? Throw that into the chat. Kind of some of the default jobs that we do for people. We have cashier, retail, yep. Food service, cleaning, stocking. Wiping tables. Busing. Yep. Grocery bagger. That's a very common one. So we're just waiting for the PowerPoint slide to come up here. But I think a large part of this is something that we call the 5 Fs. And that is going to be, and so we try to say no F words, but these are all common jobs and they're not bad jobs, okay? They are great opportunities for some people, and some people can actually have a theme if the information we've gathered about them suggests or supports them having a theme in one of these. But typically the 5 Fs, and Pam, do you happen to have the PowerPoint up by chance? Or let's see if I could here. I'm going to give it a whirl, Pam. Oh, it looks like, okay, thank you, Pam. So yeah, the 5 Fs are typically flowers, food, filth, fur, and filing. And again, that's just kind of the generic term so we can all have, all of them fit under Fs. But how many times have a lot of the bagging, or I'm sorry, cleaning jobs, busing, whatever that may be, those are entry-level jobs. Those are a lot of jobs we may have had. And those are jobs that are certainly, again, I think, okay opportunities, but is there something more? I think that's the essence of customized employment. We want them to have meaningful employment. We want them to have jobs that they're interested in, but also I think for a lot of people, they also really need to meet those ideal conditions, of course, as well. And as you can see, with the 5 Fs, these are the common jobs that we have because that's what the work experiences that we create. And there's nothing wrong with these jobs, but again, we just are looking for something a little bit richer, a little bit stronger. And so in terms of, excuse me, in terms of bringing this back is, how do we start thinking of businesses outside of this, right? How do we start thinking of and generating different ideas of where do we go next when we're talking about engaging with businesses and starting to explore more of that job development side of things. And so I think one of the big things for me is that with, again, if you can support it, you may have an interest in animals. How many people do we know that want to work with animals, right? How many people, or this is a very common one as well, but it's not under the 5 Fs, but video games. Who wants to be a video game tester? Who wants to work at the Humane Society, right? Well, and I think this is a big thing. It's going to make your jobs a lot easier when you start looking at businesses and new partnerships in the community with businesses is, hey, again, let other people go to those. It's not that they're bad relationships, not that they're bad opportunities, but I think for us, it's going to recharge our focus onto new and better opportunities because it's going to really lend ourselves to talking about small businesses and thinking about all those businesses that aren't on that main street that we always drive by, right? We're going to move on to the next slide here. We're going to talk more about themes testing. And then we're actually going to do some mind mapping right after we talk about some themes testing here.
Okay, so as we were talking about themes, if we look at our Coyote plan and example, some of the themes that came up for him were outdoors and environmental. Coyote was in particular concerned about not doing damage to the environment. So being helpful, maintaining it so that other people could enjoy it. So there were some things about him that stood out as we looked at themes. And there were a lot of different roads we could go down, and we're going to practice that in just a few moments. So as we think about, we've gathered these themes now for Coyote, the two are the outdoors, and he's really an environmentalist, almost a minimalist. He likes to reuse things, repurpose things. He doesn't like to waste. So as we move into testing themes, because remember, if we think back to that slide where Dennis Diderot did the quote, we were talking about experimentation verifies that combination of things we've gathered so far of observation and reflection. So we want to make sure we are absolutely on the right path. that our stool is going to be stable and that all of this fits together. So as we test themes, we want to take our student into a new environment. We got to be careful not to get bogged down by details, meaning we want to test the theme, but sometimes it becomes such a complex process. And just think of it, or try to get rid of some of the overwhelmingness of it and say, where can I test this theme? Where is a place? And if we use Coyote for an example, you know, where is a place where we find these skills, all those lists we made, with his interests, and where some of those conditions can be met. When we talked about some of those key conditions as being outdoors, not working with the general public, small group, quiet supervisors, those kinds of things. So focus on the information that's in front of you. It'll open up more possibilities. As we're testing themes, we want to ensure, again, that we have this model correct. If we don't, now's the time to go back, perhaps gather information, maybe re-verify something or verify something new that we've learned before we move ahead. So this is really that point of when we're testing them, are we moving ahead? We've got everything correct, or, you know, this might be a time to go back and verify some additional information if something doesn't feel or seem right, or if everything isn't coming together. When we test themes, the student is actually going to be performing skills and tasks. We also want third-party feedback. Now, when we talk about third-party feedback, can provide some feedback. When we get that feedback on their performance, on perhaps some training or learning opportunities, or they may help give us connections, but we want them to say, hey, you know, what do you think about Coyote skills, or whoever the student is that you're bringing in for a themes testing. With all of this said too, I know that this is the part, theme testing, is where you are likely going to connect with your VR counselor and bring in a provider or third party. There are some districts that are able to do it and are moving forward with some of it, but it's also a part where we say, you know, I know you have education plans to work on and complete, and so this may be a piece that the education system is not able to complete. And so in that case, the VR counselor may be making referrals to community rehab partners to help do this and gather this information. As we're looking at theme testing, again, we want it to be like or similar to this job site trial, or perhaps it can be a volunteer opportunity. It could be a tour, but most cases, tours are just learning about the environment, and we really want some hands-on tasks to be done during this period of time to make sure we have our interest, skills, and conditions correct. So there should be hands-on tasks that are happening during theme testing. It is possible that we might simulate a business opportunity that goes further than a life activity. And let me give you some examples to explain what I mean by that. I had a young woman I worked with last summer, and she was a photographer. And so one of the life activities that we did, I asked her how she spends her time. Well, sometimes I go on walks and I just take photos. So as a life activity, I went with her on a walk. It was a snowy late March day, and it had just snowed quite a bit. And she was taking photographs, and she did some photographs of icicles and snow. There were some leaves on the path, but really took a wide array of photos. And so one of the things I did for a life activity, because I said, you know, she does this, she's really interested, it meets all of her conditions, her skills, her interests, and I could see she really had some skill and an eye for photography. So one of the things I did for theme testing was have her put together the photos. We went and met with a photographer that sells his artwork in the Burnsville area, and she showed her portfolio and got some feedback on taking photos. And in this process, one of the first things he said is, where did you learn how to do this? I mean, he was really impressed with her photography. But I was able to get that information about her skills in photography just by showing it to someone else. So in that case, she wasn't actually taking photographs for this photographer, but here was someone with a lot of knowledge about photography, had his own business, and that information helped me identify that, yes, she had skills in this, and how her portfolio came together. So gave us some really important feedback about the next steps. It might be, themes testing may be similar to a one-day trial at a business, and it can be paid or not paid. Now, this is a lot easier for students when you're both talking to employers and setting up theme testing, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. You're able to have them do work, and they may or may not get paid. While they're students, it's more acceptable to do some volunteer tasks. However, that gets them a little bit more complex as we work with adults or people who are out of school, and especially older adults. So sometimes there's more issues with that, but the experience could be paid or unpaid. If they're going into a place of employment and actually completing some of the work someone does, that is likely to be paid. So let's talk about some other examples that makes an ideal condition versus learning what doesn't work. Sometimes when we do a theme testing, we're going to find out something that didn't work. Well, any information we learn is great, and we may be able to refine what some of those ideal conditions are. For example, we have a lot of people that want to perform. I've worked with many people who are interested in salon work, okay? They really like maybe having their nails done, having their hair done. They like that salon atmosphere. However, in doing theme testing, sometimes what I've discovered is the environment is really hectic, chaotic. And so if they're an individual that if they need to focus on one thing at a time and can't do as well with a lot of noise and interruption, people constantly coming in the salon, we learn that one of their ideal conditions is, yes, they have these skills, but the environment needs to be a little different. So that's why we're doing the theme testing. That's why we're learning all that. I have included a tip sheet for theme testing. And so that is labeled in the SharePoint site, handout 18. And it talks a little bit about the theme testing. That it is typically set up in at a community business when possible. And we get that third-party feedback. Who has knowledge and skills, and can we pick their brain to get some of that? The theme testing should relate to their interests, skills, and conditions. Because remember, we're trying to figure that part out. We're making sure that we have that stool right and that it's going to be stable. And again, I mentioned a little bit earlier, if you see something that's not working out, this is the point where it's okay to go back and re-verify information to get it right before we finish the process. Now, I will say sometimes when they're doing theme testing, when it's really successful, an employer may say, I want to hire this person. And we have to step back and say, whoa, 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 we're not done with the process yet. We've got to work the process through. We're not to that point yet. So we don't expect, or we're not looking for a job at this point. When we're doing theme testing, we're doing exactly that. We're not looking for that job yet. And sometimes we have to create a business opportunity. Kind of depends on your student and the situation. And we'll talk in just a few minutes, and I'll give you some tips about how to introduce the concept to employers and how to talk to employers about doing that. However, during theme testing, again, great opportunity to take lots of photos, right? They're doing some tasks. You want some photos of those tasks. And let's go back to our coyote sample. So in terms of theme testing, as we looked at his two themes, the outdoors and then the environmental, lists were made of employers that we could do some theme testing with. And we ended up doing theme testing at Three Rivers Park. It's a park that's just about 5 miles from Coyote. He lives in Lakeville, Minnesota. And so, mind you now, though, it's winter when I'm completing his theme testing and working with this young man. So I will say that time of year sometimes can play into not only some of our life activities, but then our theme testing. So in this particular case, I set up a theme testing with him to help trim trails. And so I know that he has use of equipment. And so I did take a couple of photos of him in a tree using a hand trimmer and clipper. So I was testing, you know, how does that work for him to work outdoors? I got some feedback from the gentleman that works at the Three Rivers Park District. So, and you can take a look at that in your sample. The other theme testing I did was at a wood shop, and it was someone Coyote was familiar with, but he had never been to this gentleman's shop. It's a friend of his, but never been in his workshop. So Coyote, for his project in Scouts, his Eagle Scout project, he had put together a deck. So we worked on framing and putting together a deck, and I got to see him use hand tools, assemble bolts, see how he processed information, put things together. So again, kind of making use of a lot of his skills, his interests. It was in a large shop. He had to carry some supplies in from outdoor, but it wasn't completely outdoors. So kind of looking at all those things, gathering information and figuring out, am I on the right track with Coyote? So, and one also thing, it's important to have interest with this. You know, you want to make sure that you've got all 3 components in your theme test. For example, your Minnesota CE plan should make sense. We shouldn't all of a sudden see a theme test for Coyote doing cleaning, right? He may have had some of those skills. We didn't bring those up, but it should match what's in your plan. And it's a good idea to try to find nonprofits. They're typically easier to work with. I do think it's easier to work with students because a lot of businesses or people in business are much more open to talking to young people about what they do and getting them interested in their business or how they got started in their business. So sometimes when we work with older adults, that becomes a little bit more complex. So at least in my experience working with students, it's been a lot easier to achieve these and get these set up because people want to, they're interested in drawing people into their fields of study. Okay, next slide, please. And just to kind of finish up with theme testing, I want you to put this in the chat. So as we've introduced themes, talked about theme testing, what is the big difference between a life activity and theme testing? Hopefully we didn't lose everyone. Think about what that difference is between the two. Okay, it's novel. Shows up in several categories. It is a set of tasks as a job. So, one's ability to complete a task and get feedback. Perfect. We want to get that third-party feedback. But as we think about life activities, those are things the person's already doing. They naturally do. It's in their comfort level. It's at their pace. It's where they contribute or where they do best. And it's often things that they do naturally. When we're doing theme testing, we're taking that person into a community business. So little different setting, and we're learning about how we're going to support them on a new job, the things they're going to need. We're really testing out some of those ideal conditions, what's working and what's not working. So those are the big differences. Great job. Those of you who answered, you're on track. So as you're doing theme testing, if you're thinking about entering a business and setting that up with the business, you want to be more than just a customer. When you're in a business, you know, ask about items in their store. Ask to talk to the store manager. Hey, how did you get into this business? Or tell me more about your business. You want to be an interested party in their business. As you're doing the theme testing, you want their input. And again, they just need to have some familiarity with the tasks and skills and have some knowledge about that theme area. They don't have to be the final expert. You're going to meet with that employer and ask for an opportunity to conduct some tasks in that business to complete your theme testing. And so we're going to give you some examples of how to set that up and how to explain that in just a few moments in a later slide, but this is the components of it. An example there at the bottom is, let's say a person, it does meet their skills, interests, and conditions doing laundry. So you might approach a dry cleaner, you might go in, ask them about their store, tell them what you're doing. You know, I'm working with a student. They have skills and interests in this. We just want to verify if this is a good fit for them. And we'd like your feedback in the process. So you would explain it similar to that. You might complete a woodworking project. All different kinds of examples down here. Fix a phone, attend a radio show, and use a camera or go to a photo shoot or show a portfolio of a photo shoot. We've done all different kinds of things depending on what some of the life activities were. Okay, I'm reading in the chat that Project Search interns are recently doing that. So this is your time of that observation, figuring out, do these things mesh? You know, we're verifying that we have everything put together in the order. Okay, next slide, please. So here's Coyote's theme testing. And if we look at the businesses, here's a list. I made a list of businesses in the immediate area where he lived in Lakeville. And so there was CGT Limited. They do apartment complex maintenance. So they do outside things, shoveling, things like tree trimming. There's some woods behind the apartments that they're maintaining, mowing, little bit of landscaping. I mentioned the Three Rivers Park District. They have canoe rentals. They have a lake there. They offer campsites. And so they maintain and clean up the campsites. And that's actually a place that we went to and did the theme testing after reaching out to them and learning more about them. And Coyote had been there, but it had been like 7 years. He had just done some camping there. So local business that he got an opportunity to try that tree trimming, and we got that feedback. Other options were potentially the Lakeville Park and Rec Department. Again, it was February, so not as many tasks. They were doing some things with ice skating rinks and some trimming, but not as many tasks for sure as they have in the summer. Our other theme was environmental. Cody had indicated that it's really important to him just to save our environment, to not destroy things. So we looked up some environmental organizations or agencies that were considered environmentally friendly. The Dakota Conservation Corps. They do a lot of different projects with land, water, rivers in the southern metro area. Prairie Restoration was a company that they plant native flowers and plants. They maintain park districts, wetlands. So lots of different opportunities there. And then Bryce's Wood and Reclamation, where we ended up doing an activity of putting together a deck in the shop. But again, some use of hand tools, which we saw in Coyote's list. Putting together things, only working with one person, someone he was familiar with, kind of met some of those conditions of his too. But one thing we learned is it was something he indicated that he didn't want to do full time. So again, we learned something from the experiences. But what the process of this is to really look and see what businesses fit under those, and then doing this business approach, which we're going to show you how and give you some tools for coming up here. Any questions so far about theme testing? Are we clear on themes and what theme testing does? I'm going to look at the chat quick to see if there's any questions. Liability, great question. Yes, the businesses are concerned about that at times. It depends on the business, depends on the connection. And I'm not sure, you know, each program, each school may have some of their own policies around that in terms of what's covered. So I would check with your district and see how that works as you're doing work experiences in different businesses. But it is something to address. When you see a business hesitant, one thing you can say is, I see or I'm sensing some concern. Do you have some concerns? Because then if you just openly talk about them, you can address those concerns right away at that time, if there are concerns. And like I said, I see it all over the map in terms of liability. Some are like, come on in, we'll let you do stuff. Other ideas, I know Josh has used a lot of makers spaces to do hands-on projects or woodworking or working with tools and equipment. So there may be maker spaces in some of our metro areas, perhaps even in some of our rural. And sometimes it's just finding that right connection to say, you know, is this something we can do at this particular business at this time? And, you know, I mentioned season too, that plays largely into it of, you know, what season it is. And you'll see that with Coyote. If it was summer, there may have been more opportunities and a lot of different things to explore, but it was in the winter months, which tended to be a little harder. But any other questions about themes or theme testing? If not, we'll move on to the next slide here.
All right. Just also wanted to throw in, because Margie, you highlighted businesses, but I think the key word also is third party, right? And so one of the other things that I wanted to just share really quickly about themes and connecting is you getting to know the job seeker and of course who's in their network as well. I'm going to relate this just to me really quickly in my neighborhood. Just getting to know, I moved into a neighborhood down in Bloomington, getting to know my neighbors. We have some retirees. Just on my block, my neighbor is interested in one of my neighbors is interested in brewing beer. Another is an electrical engineer. Another is retired and is into 3D printing as a hobby. Another is a reserve police officer. Another is an artist. Another is one of their kids is into robotics. So just knowing my neighborhood, I've already have people that have interest that may be willing to talk with us, right? Now, we don't expect you to use your networks and everything like that, but that also brings into context just knowing the neighbors, right? Even asking in a new way. It's not about do they have a real relationship with Coyote or not. It's whether they'd be willing to meet with us potentially to explore their hobby if it makes sense in terms of themes and themes testing. So wanted to put that out there as well as an extra resource for you. And before jumping on to mind mapping real quick, I cannot believe I didn't say this when we're talking about developing themes, but I hate to regress here, but there are no job descriptions in developing themes. And that's such a key thing. If anything we wanted you to take away, that was it. So when you're developing themes, you're not talking about specific things like a position title, a cashier, a greeter, custodian, things of that nature. Again, we're just focusing on the broad. So with that being said, we want to talk about mind mapping. Who here has heard about mind mapping? Raise your hand or throw it in the chat if you have or if you have not.
Time out a second, Josh.
Yes, ma'am.
Real quick. I think before we go on to mind mapping, we should probably break.
Okay.
But I know I was thinking of a question about themes testing. Is there any parameter around how many experiences you might have to test a theme? I know you had tested one in each theme. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Or for example, if it didn't work out very well, or you couldn't really verify that was.
Yeah. So here's just an example. Great reference point, Pam. And so absolutely, so we typically suggest 2 themes throughout this process. You can have multiple themes though. You can have 3, 4 themes. And you can also, as the reason we test it is this a strong theme to follow into actually job development and contacting businesses to talk about employment. And so here's a great example, referring it back to what Pam was talking about is, so I was mentoring another CE practitioner, and they're working with a student who was very much into music. With all the information that they have gathered, they developed this theme of music, that it was an ideal condition. He was more productive and engaged when he was listening to music. He loved looking up music and musicians. He loved going to shows, and he showed some skill in looking up and downloading music and looking up information about his favorite bands and things of that nature. So they actually developed the themes testing with a local band or a local venue to come and help set up for that show, and to also talk about music and just a little bit more. And then he also was able to enjoy the show as well. Well, what they learned was that he had no interest in setting up anything. He had no interest in being involved in that. He just wanted to talk about music. And so through this, hey, this is why we're testing it out. We decided to go with a different theme, which was more hands-on. And so this was just a great example of, hey, we went out there, we tested it. He wasn't engaged. He really said, hey, it was more of an ideal condition, but he really didn't want to be doing shows. And what he really learned also through that was music. You can get into the music industry in many different capacities, but at least this one, the conditions were, well, a lot of shows are in the evenings and weekends, and he didn't want to work in the evenings, weekends, and things of that nature. And so that's just one example right there where it just didn't work out, but that's why we do the themes testing.
Good.
Margie, did you have an example, or? Sorry.
No, but we'll talk about that in a minute too. This is the point where you go back, but we typically do one for each theme. In our Minnesota CE plan, we do ask for 2. So you want to do at least 2. If you have 3 themes and you can't, pare it down to 2, by all means, do that 3rd theme test. That's okay.
I think it's probably a good time for a stretch.
Great.
We go on to mind mapping. So maybe a 10-minute.
Perfect.
I don't even know. 2:25, so 2:35, come back to us. And we'll continue with mind mapping at that time.
All right, everyone, enjoy your break. We'll see you shortly. All right, everyone. It's welcome back from the break here. Give me one moment. So just to re-engage with everyone, we just had a discussion obviously today about themes, developing themes for our students and also themes testing. Who can tell me what a theme is in the chat?
Mean the definition or an example?
Thank you for the clarification, Pam. Give me the definition of a theme. A job, non-specific. An overall interest area that matches skills, interests, and ideal conditions. Absolutely, Nancy. Connecting factor between students and interest and ideal conditions. Yep. And I think the big thing that we want to hit home is that a theme has to be substantiated by the information that we've gathered in those three areas, okay? And just to recap is that we were previously asked right before the break, how many themes do we typically have, or should we do, and should we test? And so in the Minnesota Customized Employment, we recommend you developing at least 2 employment themes for your students or with your students, but certainly you can do more if you have, if there's the information and evidence to support a third theme as well. And then we also want you to test each of those themes at least once. And I love it, Rachel. A reoccurring, unifying interest, skills, and ideal conditions. Exactly, perfect. And so again, we're just going with the flow. We're going with and the themes themselves by nature are the strongest things to follow. It's not that they don't have other interests or other skills, but it's really where all 3 of those come into place. So moving into mind mapping, just in the chat, who has done mind mapping? Tell me yes or no if you've done mind mapping before. Couple no's. So far, majority no. Okay. Well, this is not going to be the end all to be all, and I did not invent mind mapping. I just hope to introduce it to you all. And so we are actually going to move to the next slide here. And that's okay if you've never seen this before. That's why we're going to explain it. So mind mapping is just a way to generate new ideas and to really work together to bring everyone's own unique experiences and thoughts about something in a unique and creative way. It lets you explore as a team, and I think this is such a great activity to do with your staff as a team together, and again, also with your students as well. The whole point is to get a unique variety of people with different backgrounds and different thoughts, so you can really get the most information out of it. But it really goes into deeper mode, and you're all about sharing different information. So we're actually going to bring that to life, and again, you're going to have these slides, of course, to reference. There's also tons of videos out there when it comes to mind mapping on YouTube and other things like that. But we're actually going to do a mind mapping session with you right now, okay? So I think I can share it. You know, I shared this slide with you, Emily, but I think it's going to be best if I share my screen and so I can type real time. Does that work? And I'm so sorry, everyone. I didn't realize my video was off. Apologies on that. So let me share my screen. All right. Can everyone see my screen right there?
Yes, and Josh, it looks like there's also a question in the chat from Carol. Do you use any particular app or website for mind mapping?
I typically use a whiteboard. And so that is a great question and something that I'm very curious about myself. There's knowing people out there, there's probably an app out there, but if you find out before me, let me know. Otherwise, I'll do some research and follow up as well. But for the most part, we do this on the whiteboard just because it's easier to just really draw out the circles and arrows. Here, I'm using an example. Hopefully you can all see my PowerPoint. Please let me know if you cannot. But we started at the very beginning with one of our themes. I think the strongest theme that we saw for Coyote being outdoors, right? Give me 1 second because I got to get this back up, my chat. With the shared screen, I think I have, well, Pam, Margie, if one of you could actually help me out with some of the things that come in, just because I'm not sure if I can see them in the chat. So when you think of outdoors, everyone, I'm going to ask for your participation. When you think of outdoors, what do you think of? Give me some things that you think of when you think of outdoors. Doesn't have to be jobs, just whatever comes to mind.
We got trees, forests, hiking, fishing, weather, snow plowing, state parks, animals, skiing.
Can I see that?
Lakes, hunting, exploring, hiking, DNR, boating, sunshine, water activities, biking, camping, conservation,
All right.
flowers,
I'll keep going. Yep.
trails, birds, bait shop, trails and parks.
Great. So as you can see, I just took five of those ideas that you came up with. But this is why a whiteboard is very helpful, because you're just not confined to 5 different bubbles on this screen. You could have written down every single one of those branching from outdoors. So we'll just take this one at a time. When you think of camping, what do you think about when you think about camping? What are any ideas that come up with camping?
Campfire, tents,
Any ideas when it comes to camping?
packing and unpacking, equipment, accessories, setting up a tent, s'mores, roasting marshmallows, collecting wood, grilling, sleeping bags, and equipment, being prepared, bug spray.
We know all about bug spray too well here. Any other ideas when you think about camping? Well, I know there's glamping and there's camping, right? So I'm going to throw, RVs in there? Is that would be RVs, fancy trailers? All right. And that's okay. Let's bounce over to weather. When you think about weather, just anything about weather, what comes to mind?
Rain, sunshine, heat, thunderstorms, sweatshirts, meteorologists, safety plans, unpredictability, your gear needed, trends.
What about
Dress for it, snow, outer space.
I like that. Okay. Couple more for weather. Just anything comes up. I'm going to throw up there. What do I think about weather? Wind. I don't know. Throwing that one up there.
Radar, unpredictable.
And people get to see how great of a speller I really am here. So, all right. What about lakes? Give me any ideas about lakes here.
Fish, guides, swimsuits, canoeing, fishing, boating, beach, swimming, cold.
How about zebra mussels? I know, are zebra mussels still a thing, right? They're still an invasive species. No one likes
Is there an invasive species? Yep. A cabin, sailing,
Okay.
kayaking, Weeds.
All right. What about exploring? Give me any ideas with exploring.
GPS, compass, tourism, going off-road, trails, map, hiking, caves, hiking shoes, animal tracks, trails, ATV, sense of direction, dressing in layers, discovery.
All right. Great. All right. So that was wonderful, everyone. I appreciate your participation in this. So you can see real quickly, the next one we have, how do we branch out from now? So one of these things is when you're thinking about businesses contact, whether it's for themes testing, whether it's to engage into business engagement, here's a great way now when we can break this up. We started with outdoors. Let's start with go to camping. Now we said tents. Who are people that make tents or set up tents? Is that just camping tents? Well, maybe that's event tents, right? I don't even know. Are there different tents past that? And people designing them, manufacturing them, displaying them? What about wood? What about wood? Who uses it for decor? Maybe my wife one time bought these birch, what are they called? Birch log candle holders, right? How about people who sell firewood, who chop the wood? How about people who do tree trimming and cutting down trees? What about equipment? Who does these equipment? So these are now businesses. Instead of just thinking outdoors or camping, now we're thinking about businesses that actually do these, or people or things. And so this is just a great example of mind mapping. Mind mapping is a great way to explore these new ideas, and this gets away from those 5 F's, right? You don't see cleaning here. You don't see working with animals here. You don't see some of these things that we typically think about for jobs. And so mind mapping is just, again, a really great exercise that you can do with your students, developing new ideas on where you're going to go and who you're going to contact out in the community and in the businesses and with businesses. So I am going to ask you to do a quick exercise. If you have a pencil, pen, and a piece of paper, you're going to take the other theme for Coyote, environmental. Okay, that's the other one that we came up with in the Coyote plan. You're going to do mind mapping yourself. Okay, so everyone do this. Take a pen and paper. Start with that circle in the middle and write environmental. Okay. And in your own mind, just let it free thinking, draw arrows and more circles and do that next layer, okay? We're gonna do it in, I guess you can call rungs would be. So rungs here. So that first rung, what do you think about when you think about environmental? And I'll actually change that. We'll do it this way. Impromptu here. And you can have as many bubbles, offshoots as you want. I think that's the awesome part of this. And again, you can see the impact if we all do it together as well. You're going to have that many more ideas when you think about these things. All right. Hopefully that was enough time. Just off of the bubbles that you have from that outer rung on this visual, the green bubbles, shoot off that. Now what do you think about off of that idea? Throw out some new ideas. So again, I know we're doing environmental, but just thinking about the outdoors, this is what we had as an example. Very similar, I know, but branch out.
Okay, we have legislation, green energy, conservation, recycling.
I'm sorry, Margie, can you go through that real quick? Recycling.
conservation, legislation, green energy, recycling, repurposing, habitats, air quality, water, land, and air.
That's just habit. Tat?
Preservation, solar, all kinds of ideas.
Awesome. So just whatever you have, that next layer, and then we're going to share if you have the, well, I guess we're going to just do that next layer, and then I'll bring it back and we'll do the group activity to finish this off here. So whatever you have, do that outer rung, the next rung. We'll give you about 30 seconds to do that. And we appreciate everybody's participation. This is our first time doing the mind map virtually, so we did not know how this was going to go. We appreciate you working with us here.
Okay, I've got some responses in here. Soil, water conservation, emissions, waste management, EPA, politics. So lists of things.
I'm sorry, conservation, what were the EPA, politics?
Soil / water, emissions, waste management. Wind power.
Okay. How about for green energy? Any ideas for green energy?
Maybe some of those crossed over into green energy as well. Probably the wind power.
I'm going to say sustainable, what, like?
Windmills.
Yeah, windmills. Hydropower.
Yep, prairie care.
Okay. What about habitat? What do you think about when you think about habitat?
DNR, birds, wildlife, seasons, food sources,
Great.
shelter.
Shelter, perfect. That's a big one for habitat. And last one,
Yep, that's a lot.
legislation. What are some ideas for legislation?
Filing and paperwork, policy, advocacy, organizing, lobbying, positive change, networking.
All right, great,
I think
everyone.
of money.
Money, there you go. Show me the money. Follow the money. One of the two. All right, everyone. Well, that right here, again, just a great example of us working together, using mind mapping as just a technique, as an activity that you can do with on your own. You can do it with your students, and you can do it with your colleagues as well. You can see how brainstorming together gives us the new cookie crumbs to follow when it comes to businesses that we're connecting with. I think that would be probably the purple right there as businesses. What's next? And so when you start thinking about these, again, who does politics? Who does soil? Who does emission? Who's into wind power? Who's into prairie care? Who's into food and shelter? Now you're going to be Googling a whole new list of businesses to contact, right? A lot of smaller businesses, perhaps, a lot of businesses that are off that main road, but that's going to give you the substance on who we should be contacting on this person's behalf, because we already know that potentially their skills, interests, and ideal conditions fit potentially into their type of work. So hopefully that, I'm going to stop sharing here. Hopefully that was impactful. Hopefully you can use that moving forward. Again, I didn't create it. I wish I could take credit for it, but you know, it's just an awesome tool, but I really encourage you guys to use it. And again, if you're interested in more information, certainly YouTube a video on it, or again, just riff with your team and try that as an activity to do together. So I guess I should just ask in the comments, did everyone find that activity impactful? Do you think that's something that you use in the future?
Very helpful, yes. Hands-on is impactful. Great information for C and helpful for CE. Fun. Lots of yeses.
Great. And you know, we can even share potentially that little that slide. And so that's one thing with the ECBC, right? Sharing resources. So even though I said that we prefer to use a whiteboard, maybe this is something that you can collectively do with students, right? So we can share that template for sure. Great. Yeah, like the experimental learning. Perfect. Awesome. Well, we appreciate your participation in that. And again, just something to try out yourself. And so we certainly encourage you to do so. All right, let's move forward with the next slide here.
I don't know how to segue between mind mapping and Monopoly, but we all remember the saying with Monopoly. How does that go again? You can't pass go, you can't collect $200. So when we're doing all of these kinds of things, something's not lining up. It's not making sense. It's not like it doesn't really fit. Then you might have to go back, with these, and look back at information, look back at themes, how these things are going. But as that last activity demonstrated, it whittles itself down and you get thinking in a different way and you get generating ideas. You even get to generate, like like Josh was saying, he knows people in his neighborhood that does this, this, and this. And then all of a sudden these light bulbs start going on for people. So, and back to our winding road, we're not exactly sure what's around that corner as we're working on the next bubble of the mind map. But when you trust the process, it starts to flow out and it starts to kind of come together and whittle itself into this next section, which is the lists of 10. So it's that purple, kind of that purple bubble that we ran out of room on the page for, which is what's fun about mind mapping. It's kind of like playing dominoes. Sometimes your table's just not big enough to hold everything. But so really looking now at what are those places that fit all of that, and then reflecting back on your highlighted activity that that we might be able to contact, or we might already have a contact in or for in that particular area, that you start to list these places that you could visit. Not necessarily job titles. Again, I hope you've noticed that theme throughout, is that we're not talking about job titles. We're not talking about a dog walker, or we're not talking about, I want to be a video game tester. We're not talking about those things yet. We haven't gotten there yet. So we're trusting this process. We're weaving down the road, and now we've got bubbles flying around bubbles, and it's just, it's just a mashup of stuff. But we're really trying to list these things out. So I'm going to share screen now, Miss Emily, and show you what that looks like then. Okay, give me 1 second to pull that guy up. Oh shoot, I had the mind mapping thing. Let me pull it up on here first. I guess I gotta, here we go. And whoops, shoot, what happened to my Zoom? Okay, there's Zoom. Now I can share it and I can find it. First, you got to have it up on your screen and then you can share it well. All right, so this is the list of 10 where you've got your theme, and now we're going to start listing out some things. We're going to start listing places where you might be able to find some work that matches those interest, skills, and ideal conditions. And it's actually, this list of 10 is actually 20. Because sometimes 10, initially you're like 10 places for each theme. And you're going, what? No way can I do that. As you get brainstorming around this in your team, it's definitely, you're going to be flowing with all kinds of ideas, because you saw how big, all of that got just for one theme. So yeah, it's potential to have an extra long list. And just a side note here, that it's balanced, because again, we go back to our stool. You don't want to have it too heavy in the interest and it doesn't meet the ideal condition. Josh had given us an example earlier, of where, the music was there, the interest was there, but it didn't quite work with the conditions that that student needed. So we're still coming back to our stool. We're still coming back to our curvy road and following the process and not focusing on any particular job. But just really going through this and trusting. So in this section, you're going to be listing out all of the places where you might be able to find that balance. And themes testing, mind mapping is a great way to visually do it. And it's right brain work. You've got colors, you've got, you can draw things, it's going all different directions. So it's activating different parts of the brain that we need to do that also in our classrooms as we're working with students that think and process and learn in different ways. So it's just another way. This is very linear. We could continue the mind map. It doesn't have to be a list, but we could continue that purple bubble on the mind map and go 10 off of that, or go 10 down from that. So you could just continue that mind map into this type of list of 10, 20, a bunch of places to consider in, as we're going through this process. But if it's not jiving, if it's not coming together, if it's not balancing all of those things, then you're going to get a little wobbly, and you might not collect $200, just saying. Might not. So these are just strategies that can be very helpful in working with teams, working with parents, because you want to tap into all kind of network that you have in our collaborative teams with VR and county and who's ever on that team, other work coordinators, things like that. Just brainstorming, because everybody has ideas. Everybody has ideas and connections and neighbors and uncles and people in their lives that do some of these kinds of jobs and some of these kinds of areas that might fit to explore. All right, let's try the next slide. So now that we've got our list of 10, now we got to go out and make some, now we got to reach out.
Right, and I promised all of you earlier, we were going to give you some tips, some more information about talking with business and setting these up, or just talking to businesses, making these business connections. So wanted to do that at this point in time. So you want to know what you're asking for. That is utmost important, so that you're clear, you're concise, and it comes, no, you are not asking for a job. A lot of times people forget, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know how this is going to go. It is a lot easier when you're not asking for a job. You're asking for information. You're perhaps asking to test out some skills, but you are not asking for a job. So keep that in mind. For many people, that makes the process less intimidating, feels easier for whatever reason, because you're not there yet. You want to know your role and explain your role to the business or the person that you're talking to, whether that be on the phone or in person. Your role is to help coordinate services. You're helping a student at this point in time figure out what careers and options they have before them by identifying those skills, interests, and conditions. So just state that. Point number 3, you want to take an interest in that business. To ask about who their customers are. Ask them, most people want to talk about their careers, want to talk about the fields they're in. So it's a great way to strike up a conversation by asking them questions about their business or questions about themselves and how they got into it, how they see the business changing. My gosh, we're in the pandemic, a good way to initiate that conversation might be, tell me how your business is doing right now. Tell me how your business has changed. So that can help initiate some of that discussion. And you want to have an interest in it, Tell me about the people who shop here. Tell me about your connections. Tell me where you get supplies. How does that work? Number 4 is avoid human service jargon or your jargon. A lot of times I've met with a lot of districts just in this last year that said, boy, I'm working with students who have so many more impacts of disability. I don't know where to start. So, obviously ideal place to start, we've given you the tools, is the discovery process to say what's going to work. But as you're talking to employers, try to use business terms or their terminology. As you explain a student, it's okay to say, I'm from this program, I'm from this area, I'm working with a student that has interest in, I'm working with this student that has skills in. We get away from talk of disability and what they can't do. We're showing and explaining their positives. So how you phrase that and your terminology is important. Number 5, be someone you would want to talk to, engage them, be upbeat about it, talk about the positives, reach out, make that connection. Even if they don't have something now, they might remember you if you left an impression that you could come back to and talk to them later. Number 6, always reflect and send a thank you. Hey, thank you for that opportunity, or it could be a quick email. Hey, thanks for your time. I know your time is valuable, and our ability to chat about students I work with and for you to share information about your business. That is so impactful going forward. And we know it from experience that a business may call back, could be months later, and say, hey, I remember when you called me, or I remember us having this discussion. We have an opportunity now. And so there might be something you can set up in the future, and you just want to leave that door open. And then number 7, which I'm sure many of you already know and do, is just that disability etiquette piece. There's huge pieces around disclosure. We'll talk about that more in the job development portions. It's really what your job seeker conveys, and we talk to the job seeker and or their team more about that as we move forward. And remember, during this process, you now have these lists of places to go. You're just there to try something. You're there to learn information. So if you kind of go into it with that perspective, makes the conversation easier and helps you develop those relationships and accomplish that theme testing. There are a couple pieces I want to refer to. If your job seeker needs assistive technology or accommodations, we in VRS have used the STAR program, and it's STAR program, and they offer services to help around that. It can be devices that you could borrow or take out on loan, information and assistance about different devices if someone needs something for communication, for an example, or needs an adaptive piece of equipment or AT. Maybe that's available to borrow, and that's a resource that people can have and use. And I'll go ahead and put that into the resources for this portion of the training. Also, we have a cheat sheet for setting up themes testing, and I did put that in the resources. And so it just reframes what we're talking about, what you're asking for. You're kind of confirming what you've learned about the student and that you're just trying something out. You know, you can actually just come out and say, we want to test this person to see if this still fits them, their skills, interests, and conditions. In this cheat sheet for theme testing, we also have some sample conversations about, hello, my name is Josh Dean. The reason for my email today is that I'm working with a young man who has at Valley High School named Coyote, and I'm interested in helping him explore some different career options. I noticed that you have these kinds of tasks, or this is about your business. We want to learn more about your business. You know, is there a way for us to try that opportunity to learn more about your business? So thank you, Pam. Pam has brought that up here. So actually some examples in here too of how to do that. So if you are delving into theme testing in your district, refer back to the sheet and say, oh yeah, how do I do that? You know, we've given you some great examples and samples here of just what to say, how to initiate that conversation, and how to move that forward for your student or to set that up, because it is intimidating if you haven't done that before. Couple other comments I want to make are in regard to doing this process and going into business during the pandemic. Ultimately, our goal with that theme testing is to complete those tasks, kind of finalizing what we've learned in discovery, verifying all that. There might be times when you can't fully test it just because of the pandemic right now. And we just want to say that, you know, whether you're using a provider, you know, that is something you could revisit later. We want people to move forward with customized employment. We want to carry out as many aspects of the process as we can. But this also may be a piece that has to wait due to, you know, safety precautions, whether that's on the business side or school side. You know, it is something that we may have to put off. We also need to be really creative, you know, as we come up with themes for individuals and we're thinking about different ways to test them. We do our mind mapping and we come up with all kinds of ideas. You know, is there a way we can do this using virtual space? And I know I gave an example earlier, well, that was an in-person, but we could do that virtually too. If you had a photographer show their portfolio and get that third-party feedback. Lindsay, one of our co-trainers, was working with a man who repaired small engines, and she could not find an employer that would allow him to come in and actually work on small engines. And so she did videos of him completing different maintenance on machines. And then she showed the videos, sent them to an employer to get that third-party feedback and get that information. So we know it's hard right now. We know things are unpredictable right now, but those are perhaps some workarounds or ways to keep the process moving forward at this time. And, you know, talk to your other people in your schools, other people in your district, or perhaps other people who have been trained in customized employment, just to do brainstorming. Josh and I do it all the time. We have people coming and saying, how do I do this? Again, theme testing is probably one of those pieces that's going to be pretty hard at this time, but we're hoping that we can figure out creatively ways to do that and help move the customized employment process ahead. Okay, next slide. What happened to our PowerPoint? There we go. So we finished up that one. We're moving ahead. One more. So you've seen this before. And we just want to remind you, you know, the customized employment process may not be linear, especially when you get to theme testing. Through your verification, you may determine, oh my gosh, there's something I missed, or there's another theme. Hey, it'd be a great idea if I did that, you know, test another theme, or go back and say, I want to adjust my themes. Josh gave a great example a little while ago about after doing theme testing, we said, oh, the theme doesn't quite fit. But you know what? This fits better. New idea. So now it's okay to go back in the process and do another theme test once you've made those adjustments. So just keep that in mind, that it's not linear, and at times we go back. Now, if everything aligns, like Pam showed, collect $200, pass go, move on. Okay, next slide.
All right. Well, we finally get to talk about visual resumes, and this is where the rubber meets the road, as they say. This is where we've taken all of our work so far with the job seeker, with the student, and we start to pilot. You know, we've done the observations, we've done the neighborhood mapping, we've done everything. We have quality photos of focused on them doing tasks. We've identified what their ideal conditions are, where they're at their best. Now it's time to bring it all together and present that person and help that person tell their own story, right? This is a human highlight reel of the students. This is where they get really excited about the process. This is why we show the visual resume at the beginning, so they can, and when we introduce customized employment, so they can see what the end product is going to be, and they are really engaged. And again, this is just the fun part, to bring everything together and organize it. Now, we have to say, we don't expect you to be experts in visual resumes. We don't expect you to know how to use PowerPoint or some of these other softwares, but we encourage you to try it for yourself. We encourage you to work with people on your team that have more experience with that, really, because it's just going to be such an impactful resource for you. And our goal, my utopia, part of my utopia is if every student graduated with a visual resume, because that would help them so much moving on to securing community integrated employment, moving on working with VRS, if they didn't secure it with the school districts themselves. Obviously, that's the end goal right there. But why do we create visual resumes? Again, it highlights that person's abilities and doesn't even mention somebody's disability or diagnosis, right? It's why should we hire you? And I think that the quote, you may have heard me say this before, but it's always been so impactful for me, is that it was a quote from an HR representative from a major corporation. They said, every business wants to be compassionate and give people opportunities, but every person that we hire has to impact our bottom line. So my question to you as practitioners, as providers, is how are the people that you were working with, how are your students going to contribute to our bottom line? And so the visual resume is taking the human service language and everything that we've gathered and translating into that business perspective. And we're certainly going to show you an example of that in just a moment. And again, it's all about for that person to start visualizing what that person looks like working for them, right? And think about, even when we talk about that word disability, if we open up with that word disability to an employer, what does their mind automatically start thinking of? What a person can't do, or what their limitations are. We're already starting off on the wrong foot with that employer. We want to talk about the positive, and this gives them a visual to follow through to continue on that conversation. And so using that. And so the type of visual resumes, we can use that with a PowerPoint, Publisher, Excel. There are portfolios that you can put together. Some people have examples of their work. Let's say they're an artist or a craftsman or a photographer. That can certainly be incorporated into this. Also, there are even some school districts that are doing this right now, but video resumes as well. So if you're to that point that you're doing video resumes and doing software, utilizing different softwares and things like that, fantastic. But we really wanted to focus on just the paper copy, so to speak. Really, it's going to be an electronic version using one of PowerPoint is the one that I use the most, and others use as well. So with that being said, I also wanted to just reference a tip sheet right now, if we could bring that up. It's a quick tip sheet again for visual resumes, and it just really highlights some basic things. We had talked about you all are already experts with taking photos. We need to instill that, empower others who are helping the job seeker take photos. If you're not the one doing it, that they're the experts as well. But just highlight some of the things that we're looking for with the visual resume. Again, clear photos of the individual, of just the individual, focused on tasks, right? Focusing on where they're at their best. And we want to show a wide variety of them and a wide variety of activities, tasks, and environments. Interacting with people is okay, but at the same token, we want to make sure it's very clear that who that person is, right? That we're focusing in on. So again, utilize this tip sheet. It's not the end all to be all, but it's just something as you're crafting visual resumes. We certainly encourage you to use this tip sheet. Also, one thing that I just wanted to highlight and bring back is we certainly recommend and encourage all of you to create a visual resume of yourself, okay? This is such a powerful tool. So, hey, Josh, can you give us a sample of visual resume? Sure, but a great way to introduce this process and show that you're a practitioner, that you're part of this, and that, is to create a visual resume on yourself, because that will show people who you are as a person outside of work as well, right? And so it'll be a powerful tool if you could make one of yourself. So with that being said, I think we can jump to the next slide.
You want to show
the visual resume?
Oh, just a second. Do you want to show coyotes?
Yeah, I was going to show it the next slide and then the resume, but I can certainly do that. So
yeah, it's just that since I'm sharing, I've got it up. And then instead of going back and forth between.
Sure, we'll just, the next slide kind of will recap everything instead of setting it up. So why don't we just do the visual resume? So this is an actual visual resume that someone created within their Minnesota CE, and it highlights a gentleman who we're going to call Coyote.
Yeah, very. Shoot, I just had him. Just a second. I got too many screens open. Well, okay. Too many screens spoil the soup. Adam, where'd he go? Oh, here he is. Okay. Hopefully I can share this. I'm gonna give this a try. Yes. There he is.
So here's Coyote Jim here. We always like to start with a nice photo of them, right? Set this up. This is what we call a cover page for it. It's just like a cover page that we would create in a typical resume type format. And the whole point of that is, who is this? Why should we turn to the next page, right? We want a clean cut shot of them. If possible, and we always like to add, at least Margie and I and Pam, we like to add a little tagline there too to kind of highlight who that is, and so I always enjoy that part of it. But we can move forward to the next page. So snow removal. So here's Coyote Jim actually doing the snow removal, right? This is the life activities that we follow them on. We're showing them plowing. We're showing them in the elements. We're showing them using machines, and also just the old-fashioned arm power there with the shovel. We're also showing the nuance of him operating the machine and getting it ready, priming it up, things of that nature. As you can see, we also describe the photo that we're sharing as well. It can be a brief description, just it helps, again, set that narrative for the story that we're telling. Go ahead. When I'm at my best, I think, again, this is such an impactful slide. This just sets up those ideal conditions that we've already discovered and verified, and that we think already exist in these businesses that we're going to be approaching. But it's just highlighting it. Working outdoors, working with materials accessible to me in my area, completing physical tasks, contributing to preserve our natural environment, reusing and repurposing items and materials and minimizing waste, working on my own in small groups there with few public interactions. So imagine if you were approaching a business doing waste management or doing in this industry, right? It's very easy for them to conceptualize, hey, we do that here. Hey, we work outside. Hey, we give our employees the tools to get things done. Hey, we do physical tasks here. So you're painting this picture already where typically it's a clever way of suggesting ideal conditions or reasonable accommodations. They already do these things naturally here. That's why we are doing the whole customized employment process. All right, next. Here's ice fishing. Here are the hobbies. Again, showing him that he's just not doing chore work. He's actually doing the baiting. He's sitting outside. He has the patience for fishing. He's setting up a depth finder. He's catching the fish. He's filleting the fish. We didn't show that one, but you know. But you know, it just again shows him on all these different activities, pruning the trees at Three Rivers, working outside with his hands, again, just in the elements, enjoying what he's doing. Go ahead. We also want to set it up by just highlighting their skills and attributes again. So it's one thing to share the photos and to also put their narratives. But we also like these full pages, just again, to recap everything that we're seeing about the job seeker, in this case, Coyote Jim. He's artistic, he follows directions. Well, that's fine, don't worry. Next is the, you know, again, what is he like in his real life? And what does he do naturally? Here's his Eagle Scout project, something you're very proud of, right? A major accomplishment. I mean, Eagle Scout is no joke. I mean, in the military, they actually give you an automatic promotion if you're an Eagle Scout. So that's how impactful it is. That's how you know, serious that is, and what an accomplishment it is. So here's him doing his Eagle Scout and an Eagle Scout project. It can relate to, you know, when you think of an Eagle Scout, when you think of a Boy Scout, actually put that in the chat. When you think of a Boy Scout, what do you think of? And I'd be very impressed if you can recite the whole Boy Scout mantra. Honor, always prepared, interested in the community, leadership, trustworthy, helping people, loyal, resourceful, striving for excellence. Awesome. These are great things and all true, right? So even showing that visual of an Eagle Scout or a Boy Scout, those are the things that we naturally think about when we see them. Are those qualities that employers are looking for? Absolutely, right? So these are why we do these connecting pieces, so we can help them visualize and connect with the job seeker, right? So here's the engine maintenance. It's just going through these different steps. It's showing fine motor skills. It's showing that he's using technology. It's showing him using a sequence of things. So again, a great example. Him outdoors, just snowshoeing, just some of those activities, being able to be outside. And again, well, this is a long story, but there's just so many times where an employer has made a connection, just not about their business, but about their personal lives, that, hey, we have the same interest. Hey, let's talk about that a little bit. Hey, I really like you. Maybe I should hire you, right? Word burning, again, just the intricacies, the different things that someone can be doing. Again, I mentioned for Coyote Jim, here's beautiful work that he's doing, intricate, using tools, attention to detail. There's so many unique skills that we want to highlight that the people that we're working with do on their own. Pencil sketchings, artwork, drawings, still with outdoor themes, deck construction, yep. And then here's the tie-in. This is the contributions to the business. Now we've seen the job seeker in a wide variety of different environments, doing a wide variety of different tasks, really being at their best. And now we want to, here's how we start negotiating and bringing up potential contributions to your business. This is, as I started off with that quote, how are the students that we're working with going to contribute to the bottom line of businesses? Well, let's paint that picture again. We've highlighted them. We've shown them in all these different environments doing these tasks. Now we're painting the picture with the contributions to your business on how they could potentially do that. We're throwing ideas out there. So it's safety, skills, first aid training, sense of use of small hand tools and power tools, trimming, pruning, invasive trees, shrubs, operating machinery and equipment. So even if they don't do those specific things in their business, they can probably see him doing other machinery or doing other tasks very similar to that, right? So move on to the next slide. And then we just want to finish it up with a very nice photo of them. We want to just say maybe an end quote, explore employment options with Coyote. Hey, we have a point of contact at the end. How do we follow up? Certainly if the student wants to be that point of contact, have them be that point of contact, absolutely. If that person doesn't feel comfortable or needs that extra support, as you can see, Margie put her contact information there. I always like to throw in there, please contact Coyote's personal assistant, Margie Webb or Josh Dean, right? Just a little extra. Let's put the star of the show there. You know, I'm just here, I'm the supporting cast. The students are the star of the show, so let's make sure that we're doing our due diligence to give them that limelight there and keep the focus on them. So again, it's just really impactful. As you can see, a visual resume is, you can see how taking photos, descriptive writing, all these things really come together, and we translate it from that Minnesota CE plan or whatever documents you use as educators to document this and bring it to life in a visual resume. So again, this is such an impactful tool. Hopefully that was a good example. You can get a better sense of what a visual resume is now. Here are the key components again, just to recap all of that. We have a cover page with the portrait, photo, and name. We also like a tagline in there. You don't have to have any identifying information in terms of, you do want to include a name. That's typically helpful in any resume. Obviously, you get the releases signed for all of that, but you don't have to add their contact information, right? You don't have to add the address or their phone number or things of that, some of that sensitive information. It's just not needed for this at this time. You want to handle the skills and attributes. Again, we're painting that picture of what they're going to see or recapping the information of what they just saw. Where I'm at my best. From the employers themselves, this has been the most impactful thing for them. And if we're doing our due diligence on themes and themes testing, we're already targeting businesses where we believe a lot of those ideal conditions already exist. Again, it doesn't make sense for a guy like Coyote Jim to be going in and being a greeter at Walmart, right? Doesn't make sense for Coyote Jim to be doing paper shredding or filing in an office, right? He belongs with his people outside, working with his hands and doing cool things outside and with the environment. We want quality photos. Again, 3 to 5 photos of each task and with a short narrative and a wide variety of tasks, 3 to 5, you know, that's why we do 5 life activities. So you have the variety to pick from when you're doing the visual resumes. This is why we encourage you to take photos nonstop. I mean, there are life activities where I have 100 photos. You know, it's not that difficult because I'm taking different snapshots, you know. I will say one hint for visual resume is sometimes when you're doing life activities and observing them, they may be doing a task extremely quickly and very well. It's okay to say, hey, can you pose for this shot real quick just to slow it down so you can get an accurate photo. We don't want to take a misrepresentation of we don't want to misrepresent though and take a photo of something they're not actually doing and stage a shot. Where we see him doing it, then we just ask him to freeze for a second so we can capture that moment and what they're doing. Again, potential contributions, that page is tying it back to the business, what they could be doing for them, painting that pictures. That's going to set up that conversation for community integrated employment moving forward. And then again, that conclusion page, don't just leave it hanging. Tell the end, how do we continue the conversation, right? How do we talk more about Coyote Jim and the different possibilities? Where we have that photo of them, we have a tagline thanking them for their time and consideration for looking over this. And then we also have a contact information, whether it's the job seeker, student, or one of ourselves. A couple of different quick notes on a visual resume. This is an evolving document. This is something that we hope that continues on with an individual, and as they develop new interests, maybe we're taking old interests out, right? As they experience new things and develop new contexts, or we learn more about them, this is an ever-changing document, but something also that they can take on with them past school into, and continue on with their employment journey, whatever provider is helping them, whatever agency is helping them. This can be their forever document. And I will tell you this, being on the side of the service provider world, you know, as much as an IEP and other documents are impactful, when I'm going to a business, if I have a choice between a visual resume and IEP to bring to a business, I'm taking the visual resume. And then, so you can see how that would be more impactful because obviously it's speaking the language of the business. So, but anyway, go ahead.
We have a question in the chat here. Would you recommend that Coyote send his visual resume to an employer as an email attachment?
Great. You know, in this day and age with the pandemic, this is maybe the way that you're introducing a job seeker. So this is why we do it electronically to have this. Great question. So absolutely, at this point in time, we always like to, Margie, Pam, and I like to be prepared for both in person and for it electronically. So one tip for electronic is to save the document in a PDF as well. One, it's when you create, let's say, a PowerPoint and use images, it creates a lot of data, which can prohibit sometimes if it's too large of a file to send or slow it down. Also, depending on the version of the software, let's say PowerPoint they have, it could distort things. So save it as a PDF because that's going to condense the file and then also give it to it and make sure the formatting doesn't get messed up. But to elaborate on that as well, we also are prepared in person. Margie and I carry around a copy of the visual resume that's printed off that we actually use in conjunction with something that we'll talk about, which is an employer presentation. And part of the reason is that I like it is that we can leave something tangible with the employer. Again, I think I used this before, told you guys last time, but I worked with an employer that literally, we introduced a visual resume. They didn't have a job for him. 6 months later, they contacted us and they said, hey man, this visual resume has been hanging on my bulletin board for 6 months, and I think I got a job for this person. And I was like, I am awesome at my job, you know, so. So that's the power of it. And then also the nice thing about electronic though, we can follow up electronically if we show it in person. Sometimes we can load it up to either a Google Drive, if that's something that we're sharing documents with. And maybe that's part of the package for our students as they leave transition, as they progress in transition and leave. And then also you can also load up PowerPoints to YouTube as well and other forums. So it's just a great way to share visual resumes.
I think that we now have like this really interesting, deep, evolved picture of Coyote now throughout today. But Margie, what type of person was Coyote? You had described him at the beginning of our session. Can you tell us a little bit more now that we have, you know, we have all this information about him? What was he, what was that description that you gave us earlier of him? Because I don't think it matches right now.
He's very quiet and shy. He's a person that wouldn't answer the door. If somebody came to the door, he wouldn't answer a phone if he didn't know who it was or someone really familiar. He'll look away asking questions. He's really got to know someone. He's very secluded, isolated. He likes to spend time alone and outdoors. Very few interactions. So, and yet he doesn't talk about himself. So a school would probably have no idea about his drawing, he doesn't talk much about his hunting, fishing, or activities. So it might be a case where he didn't share anything. He might talk about, if someone asked him and he had a relationship, he may answer questions, but not someone that was going to offer any information. Pretty withdrawn and very secluded. You know, there was no issue with communicating, but he just chooses not to. He's very quiet.
And I think that it's just an example of, we have these students in our classrooms that don't offer, that don't talk, that shrug, that don't engage. And that is like the complete opposite of what I feel about Coyote right now. You know, after learning all this, after seeing all this, even after looking at the visual resume, it just seems like, because didn't you even say that he may not have been somebody that somebody would have thought was employable?
He doesn't share anything, so you just don't know. He just doesn't talk. So isolating, and so you learned a lot about talking to his siblings. I mean, a lot of people didn't even bring up the drawing or the artwork. You know, it's something he could do if he couldn't be outside. So just, you know, his lack of sharing information. And so people said, well, how's he going to communicate with an employer? How's he going to be able to learn skills? How's he going to ask for work-related needs? Those kinds of things came up that said, I don't know how he's going to work or who, you know, obviously there's tons of skills there, but he has to get to know you on his terms and it needs to be outside and there's a lot of parameters around it. So, you know, when we talk about communication, there's a guy that is very minimal in communication.
Right.
And hopefully you guys can.
Well, it is time for a short break because we've been going at it for over an hour. Why don't we give people a 5 minutes? So we're going to come back and do our best to wrap up at 4. So just maybe a quick 5-minute stretch break. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll answer those in the chat. Okay. So 5 minutes, come back at 3:45 and we'll try to get you out of here at 4.
Excellent. And then next slide. So now that we've accumulated all of this information, we've reflected on it, we've talked about it, we've built it, we've summarized it in the plan. Going back to the plan, now we have a meeting to kind of share all of this information out. So we bring that team, that initial CE planning team, back together. And we have a tip sheet that we'll share too about inviting people to that plan. So we've kind of set that up for you to fill in the blanks kind of thing. But so now we bring this, we've kind of accumulated all of this information and finished the discovery part of him. So we now have this really broad and deep and rich and vibrant picture of Coyote, or the job seeker that you're working with that you didn't have before. I can't get that information in the school confines. So we need to work with each other to gather all of that. But now that we have all of that, now the meeting is the point where we kind of switch gears now. And we're moving into more of that specific job. I know there was there have been some discussion in the chat, about employers and sharing with employers and things like that. We're not quite there yet. But so now we need to bring all this information back so everybody knows it. So now the whole team has this picture and can see the resume and any of the videos. I know for us, we add video clips also to our visual resumes that aren't exactly printable. So when you if you were to print a copy of this, Megan had mentioned in the chat about attaching a QR code to the paper version so that an employer can scan that and get that sent to them and they can see that, and that sort of eliminates some of the file size issues also. And someone had mentioned about the Google, if your district is using Google Suite with students, they have a student account through the school that will stop when they exit. So part of our development of students is they have their own professional personal email account that then they share all of that folder or portfolio of things with their personal account so that they can take that with them when they leave and it doesn't disappear for their access. So I'm gonna share out just real quick the meeting invite, and then Marjorie's gonna kind of go through the meeting. Okay, I lost my Zoom. Here's my Zoom. Okay, I'm gonna share the invite real quick. Here's an example of an invitation. So it's, more of a professional format, and it's just to fill in the blank. Because this is really student-centered. It's them. They've been an integral part of this whole process throughout, and they're sharing out about that student, all of these positive and descriptive things about who they are, what they can do, what they like to do. And they've gotten a lot clearer throughout this process as well. So just kind of talking about, you've got your agenda right here. And at the end of the meeting, what employers are going to benefit? Are they going to be able to contribute all of these assets too? So that's just real briefly what an invitation might look like. So I'm going to stop that one. And then Margie, I'm going to put up the meeting checklist. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want to look at the slide before that?
I'll tell you what, I'll talk through the slide because you've already got that up. So I'll just start talking through this as you're putting that up. So our final customized employment plan meeting, we are concluding the discovery process. This meeting is very different from others you have had. It is important to keep it separate from other meetings, meaning an annual review, an IEP meeting, because these typically, we slot about 90 minutes for this, and they're going to run about that amount of time. So in thinking about planning for that, it is best to be a standalone meeting. It is different from others you've had. It is an activity-based meeting. You're going through all the information that you've gathered thus far. You're going to show people the information. People are going to have an opportunity to contribute more. It is important that your job seeker, as you're inviting people, that the job seeker has say. Pam's right. This is their meeting. They have say about who comes. They have say about what information you're going to add, the information that you're doing. You're going to talk about a place to have a meeting. And that is typically not, I have a lot of meetings in libraries, community centers, there are other places that the job seeker desires and is comfortable with. And let's talk about that just for a second. A lot of young people have had uncomfortable meetings. And so sometimes they're like, I'm not going to my meeting. I don't want to participate. We have found that if you find a place that works in a community setting, it's, if it's not at school, if it can be somewhere else, the job seeker or your student seems a little bit more comfortable. I ask them where they're comfortable. Oftentimes we might do some decorating of the room. What's their favorite color? They might bring snacks and or drinks to share so that it's a very casual meeting. You may have people there that are friends and not necessarily professionals. Depends who you send invites out to and who that job seeker wants at their meeting. So I'll be going through this in just a second. The other part of that is, so Pam has this guide up here. This guide will give you all the information you need to either participate in a final CEP meeting or conduct one yourselves if you find yourself in that situation. Now, maybe VR has partnered with a community rehab provider and they're running the meeting. We still wanted to give you all the resources and tip sheets so you knew what's going to happen at the meeting, so you understand the flow of the meeting, and you can be our double check to make sure the meeting's going as scheduled from a CE practitioner. You're going to start off by welcoming everyone, and you're going to establish ground rules. Now, when I typically set up a meeting, I might have flip charts that I might put on the walls. If I can't post things, it depends on the room and space and where I'm at. I also have some desktop flip charts. You could also do this electronically. I'm not sure how you're doing your IEPs right now, but you could just put this on the computer, show it on a screen in a room. I would imagine everyone's doing it virtually now. We do have some meeting templates to do a virtual CE meeting. However, the components are going to be similar. You're going to establish ground rules. The ground rules are that we're talking about community integrated, paid, customized employment. We're not talking about, now that we've done this, what is the person going to do? It's focusing on employment possibilities for your student or Coyote in our sample case. Coyote and or legal guardian approves all the suggestions and the information going up. If other team members bring up other things, now in Coyote's meeting, you'll see that somebody started talking about a driver's license. Boy, that would be helpful for him to have it. You're right, but we're going to put that in the parking lot because we're not talking about that today. So that's one aspect of it that I put up on a chart or that you can put up on a board or show up on your computer. Next item is, what does Coyote bring to a job or your student bring to a job? I go around and as people do introductions, I ask them to contribute. Why? We want everybody in the room to contribute. We don't want the meeting just held by you or someone else. We want Coyote participating as much as possible, but we want to bring out those positives and start it off with a good flow of, what do you appreciate or what skills do you feel Coyote brings to a job? And this is our list, which will end up as the attributes and things that why an employer would want to hire Coyote, okay? The next item that we address is ideal conditions. And so lots of times parents, other stakeholders will have input into this, but again, we turn to Coyote and say, do you agree with that? Is this something that you want on this list? And so we're covering all these basic aspects of customized employment. Next spot up there is, after ideal conditions, is strengths and skills. We want everybody to contribute. Then we put up a sheet with interests, and I'm sorry that I'm going through this really fast, but I'm trying to stick to our timelines here. Then we put up interests, because no matter what happens, and when I've done discovery, there's a couple new things that come in that people forgot about that know the person well. So by having those come in now, after the meeting, I can go back and add those before I send out my final plan. The next thing we look at is we talk about our theme development, what those themes are in job tasks. We list out job tasks right within those themes. For Coyote, it was outdoor and nature or environmental. We're going to start to list job tasks under those themes. You'll see in our sample tip sheet here how that lists out. And so everybody in the room is throwing up ideas, kind of like the mapping where we were exercising, the mind mapping that Josh was doing earlier. We're throwing up ideas, everything we know about our student. And then once we develop those lists, we ask, does anybody in the room have contacts? You know, I find out that parents or grandparent, sometimes a work coordinator will have a connection with a particular business. Well, I want to make note of that, right? So that I can have a list of not only businesses to start the job development process, but contacts there that I can reach out to and say, you know, Kayla Jim, Coyote's mom, suggested that I give you a call, or you've had a relationship there. It helps get you in the door to have those contacts. Anyway, there's time frames listed out with this. I used this guide probably for the first 3 final meetings I had, just to make sure I didn't forget anything. It was intimidating first time I did a meeting or went to a meeting. So go ahead and use the resources. This is handout 22 that we've given you. I printed out and had it right with me. To this day, before I do a final CEP meeting, I will pull out that guide and make sure that I've got everything lined up. So information is in here on how to do that. One important point is you may need to arrange a note taker if there's a lot going on. Now, if you can, you know, type right on your laptop or however you typically do that in your meetings, you know, go ahead and do that. Sometimes if I had a lot going on, I arranged for someone to come and assist me, or I asked somebody on the team to assist me. I've had the job seeker do that too. They wanted to help, they wanted to participate. And they kind of liked writing on my sheets that were hanging all over. So as we finish up our slides, so again, it's an activity-based meeting. There's rules. We're finalizing lists of tasks the person does under their themes. We have this great visual resume, and the meeting typically lasts about 90 minutes. And you can go on to the next slide, Pam. Kind of covered those things, followed these. So we'll take it on to Josh to wrap us up for the day.
Real quick, no, that was, I know we just buzzsawed through that, everyone, and that was a lot of information. That certainly can be a topic point that we talk about moving forward as well. It's just such, as you saw after we went through the visual resume, you get excited about the job seeker again, you know, bringing it all together. That same effect happens with the team. A lot of times they haven't seen their son or daughter or brother or sister, whoever it is, in this capacity, and they've never had a specific ask. So imagine originally asking for some contacts. Hey, who do you know? How can we help you? Before the visual resume. After the visual resume and all this work we've done in discovery, it brings it together, and then people get fired up and want to help because now they can also conceptualize, just like the employers, how they can help with this process. So much more guidance on that. Again, it's how do we embed this into the training or into your own curriculum. We also have a virtual format for our CEP meeting that we're happy to share it after this and discuss further with the ECBC. With that being said, we have exactly, well, maybe 60 seconds. I don't have seconds, but we have 60 seconds before 4, and we want to honor our time commitment to you. You guys have been fantastic throughout this training. We really appreciate all the participation, and we really hope this has been impactful. We could ask for one ask from you, is that work with yourself, or two asks. You as an individual professional and with your team, come up with what's impactful for you and what you're going to work on in between now and our next ECBC session. With that being said, we are always around to answer questions. We love nerding out about CE. So if you have any questions, reach out to Margie, Pam, or myself, or else throw in a question here in the chat, and we will make sure that we send a follow-up email answering any of those questions. So with that being said, peace, love, health, prosper to everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
We forgot to mention all the tiers. That I've been at CE planning meetings that there's a lot of flow of emotions
That's true.
that happen.
I see that almost every time a parent gets all that in front of them. It's like, oh my gosh, just overwhelmed with joy about all of the skills, and just that it was positive, because a lot of parents and teens don't always get that much positivity, I'll say. Not that it was bad, but that much positivity, and see their child in a different light.
Yeah. Well, good job, everyone. Yeah. So I made a few errors on my part as well. Man, I didn't convert the timing. I was just like, oh yeah, the timing's the same, it's for the AM, and I didn't convert it, so I was just off. So I'll make sure I make the adjustments for the next one here. But I really appreciate you guys jumping in and reading out the chats. I mean, we'll have to make those adjustments for some of the activities, but with the mind mapping and also doing the themes, that was really helpful. I thought I was gonna be able to do both at once, so I just appreciate you guys just jumping in and doing it.
It was
You
so
guys
good,
rocked
you
it.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The engagement, it's just really cool to see everybody so engaged in that chat.
Yeah, who knew, right? I mean,
Right.
the secret to virtual training, chat.
But they came alive. I feel like there was like a little area where I was like, are people sleeping? Are they there? And then they, all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, there they are.
Well, I made the mistake of saying during the highlight activity, turn on your video when you're done. I didn't realize that, of course, the factor that some people may not be at their desk right now.
Right.
So, but a lot of people did obviously tune in, and even those who didn't turn on the video were participating in the chat. So
Yes. Let's see. I'm going to stop the recording.
oh yeah.